Imagine working your tail off as a simple assistant only to have your blindfolded boss suddenly ask for your hand in marriage over a casual cup of tea.
Our story kicks off with Marin enjoying the luxury of the Duke's castle, feeling grateful for the warm bed and the fat paycheck, until the Duke drops a romantic bombshell that nearly makes her choke on her drink.
Marin is absolutely convinced her ears have checked out for the day because there is no way the most powerful man in the West just asked her to be his wife. She tries to play it off as a massive misunderstanding, but the Duke isn't playing around and bluntly asks if her hearing has gone bad along with her common sense. Seeing the panic in her eyes, Marin tries to make a break for the exit under the classic excuse of needing a doctor, but the Duke isn't letting his prey escape that easily. With a single sharp command, he forces her back into her seat, making it very clear that this conversation is far from over. Marin's brain is doing gymnastics trying to figure out if this is just another one of his cruel jokes or a test of her loyalty.
She looks at him, wondering why a high and mighty Duke would ever tease a lowly assistant who is supposed to be invisible in the grand scheme of the castle.
The atmosphere goes from awkward to terrifying when the Duke leans in and calls her by her secret noble name, Lady Marin Schwentz. It turns out her undercover operation as a commoner was a total fail because the Duke has known exactly who she was from the very first day. Our girl is paralyzed with fear, realizing that her perfect disguise was about as effective as a screen door on a submarine.
The Duke accuses her of infiltrating his house for a specific reason, and Marin's hiccups betray her nervousness as she realizes she is now totally at his mercy. We take a trip down memory lane to a time when Marin's life was less about marriage proposals and more about survival. She recalls a cold morning trying to care for her sickly mother, offering soup and medicine that her mother is too weak to even taste. The reality of her situation is heart-wrenching, as Marin watches her mother skip meal after meal while growing thinner by the day.
She is terrified that if things don't change soon, her mother might not even make it through the harsh winter ahead. In a rare moment of peace, Marin promises to read her mother's favorite books to help her sleep, proving that she's the ultimate devoted daughter. But this touching family moment is violently shattered by a loud, aggressive thud at their front door. Enter the local villain of the week, landlord Giorno, who shows up with a smug face that is just begging to be slapped. He greets Marin with a cold attitude that tells us right away that he isn't there to bring them a holiday fruitcake. The landlord drops a financial nuke on Marin by announcing that the rent has officially tripled starting this month. Marin is horrified, pleading for a shred of mercy because there is no way a poor girl like her can pull that kind of money out of thin air. Instead of being a decent human being, Giorno gets aggressive and threatens to kick Marin and her dying mother out onto the streets if the gold isn't ready. He calls her a dried-up broomstick and slams the door, leaving her in a pit of absolute despair as winter approaches.
With no options left and a mother to save, Marin realizes that playing by the rules is going to get her killed.
She starts considering her ultimate secret weapon, the fact that she knows exactly how this world is going to end.
Here is the big twist. Marin is actually a reincarnated soul who ended up in the world of a novel called The Bluebird of the Western Duke Does Not Cry.
After a fatal carriage accident in her past life, she woke up in this fantasy world realizing she's living inside a book she's already read. She knows she isn't the star of the show, but just a background character who was never meant to have a single line of dialogue.
She recalls the original plot where the Western Duke loses his sight to demons and is eventually saved by a legendary female herbologist.
In the original story, the Duke finds his happy ending with the heroine while Marin remains a nameless extra.
But her current reality is a nightmare of debt and poverty that the original author definitely didn't mention in the footnotes. Marin reflects on how House Schwentz went from being a wealthy family to a pile of debt after her father and brother died in a tragic accident. Without any resources or a proper social debut, her title as a viscount's daughter is basically a worthless souvenir.
Having reached her absolute breaking point, Marin decides to stop being a victim of fate and start using her spoilers as a weapon. She is done playing the invisible side character and is finally ready to rewrite the story to ensure her own survival, starting with the man sitting right in front of her.
Our story continues at the magnificent Vines estate, where Marin is in the hot seat for the interview of her life. She earns instant points for her incredibly elegant handwriting, which definitely isn't something a typical commoner assistant would possess.
Internally, Marin is reeling because she realizes she is standing face to face with a major character from the novel.
Meeting Olive Lyon, the prestigious aide to the Duke, is making her nervous enough to vibrate right out of her seat. When Olive asks how she learned to read, Marin spins a quick lie about her previous employer teaching her because she was interested in books. She claims she just rereads her limited collection since new books are way too expensive for a poor girl like her. Olive notes that most noble women focus on music or art, but Marin's true passion has always been buried in a story.
She recalls begging her father to teach her to read in her past life, making her a total reading fanatic.
The vibe turns cold when Olive drops a bombshell. He was actually looking for a boy assistant named Marion.
Marin realizes she had no other choice but to show up as herself to even get a chance to meet the Duke.
She covers her tracks by claiming her brother Marion ditched the opportunity to work in the capital instead. Olive warns her that hiring female staff is usually a job for the head maid, making her situation incredibly difficult. The realization hits that the assistant position isn't for Olive, but is specifically for the Duke himself. Marin sees a flash of the Duke's intense golden eye, realizing just how high the stakes really are.
Olive brings up the unfortunate accident that befell His Grace, a tragedy known by everyone in the region.
He tells Marin to leave at once, but she refuses to go back to poverty without a fight. Marin grabs a book to demonstrate her specific abilities, determined to show she's the only one for the job. She's about to drop a scholarly flex that Olive will never see coming. She begins to read a complex text about the changing ecology of monsters and how they adapt to their surroundings. Olive is stunned into silence, mesmerized by her perfect delivery and intellectual grasp of the material. Marin proposes that she can read documents aloud since the blind Duke would need someone reliable to handle reports.
Internally, she reveals her secret weapon: her past life skills as a professional voice actor.
Olive admits her talent is surprising, but he doesn't have the authority to hire a personal reader for the Duke. Reading sensitive documents to the ruler is a completely different matter of trust and security.
Marin feels a wave of despair, wondering if she must go back without even meeting the man she came to see. She thinks about the rising rent and her mother's medicine, realizing failure is not an option.
Olive admits he has been genuinely troubled over the matter of reading documents to His Grace for a long time. He concludes that Marin's special ability might actually be the solution to all his problems. Olive decides to take a gamble and offers to take her to see the Duke immediately for a final interview. Marin follows him with a newfound hope, ready to face the male lead of the novel. They navigate through hallways as dark as a pitch-black cave, barely able to see the path ahead.
The atmosphere is heavy and suffocating, reflecting the lonely world the Duke now lives in.
Olive warns her that the Duke is extremely sensitive to light and gives her strict precautions for her service. Marin nods solemnly, understanding that she is entering a world of permanent shadow.
Finally, she comes face to face with the male protagonist, the blindfolded Duke Gerald. The legendary bluebird of the Western Duke is right in front of her, and her life is about to change forever.
Olive approaches the high and mighty Duke to ask for permission to hire a new servant. He pitches her as someone incredibly special who could actually be helpful to a man in the Duke's position.
Duke Gerald is initially acting like a total hater, questioning why he should even care about the hiring process of a single lowly servant.
Olive isn't backing down though, insisting that it would be in the Duke's best interest to keep this specific girl by his side. Olive clarifies that she isn't a doctor, but she is definitely someone who will be useful for His Grace's unique needs. He brings Marin into the lion's den and tells her to perform exactly like she did during her audition in the reception room. Marin takes a deep breath and tells herself she has to crush this performance. She begins reading a high-stakes report about a silver mine discovery in the Nylon territory that is currently causing some major headaches. The report reveals that after a year of mining, they only found low-grade junk instead of actual silver. To make matters worse, the tunnels are crawling with monsters, making the miners too terrified to even step inside. Mining experts are already calling it a lost cause and recommending that the Duke shut the whole operation down immediately. This is labeled as an urgent report, pressuring the Duke to give the order to close the mine for good.
While reading, Marin has a major spoiler alert moment, as she realizes this mine is a legendary plot point from the original novel.
She remembers that this abandoned mine becomes a gold mine, well, a gemstone mine, later in the story.
In the original book, the female lead visits this exact spot to find herbs, but ends up discovering a mineral that changes everything.
It turns out the mine isn't a silver mine at all, but is actually packed with a brand new type of gemstone. These stones are actually precious opals, and they are about to become the hottest trend in the entire social circle.
Marin realizes that once their brilliant shine is revealed, the price will skyrocket, and she laments that closing it now would be a massive waste of fortune.
Our girl gets so lost in her thoughts that she accidentally whispers her critique out loud. The Duke pulls a total jump scare, appearing right behind her and demanding to know what exactly she thinks is a waste.
Marin is so startled that she nearly does a backflip, but the Duke catches her before she hits the floor. As she's being held, she can't help but notice that the male lead is even more handsome up close than the book described. She snaps out of her fangirl moment and tries to fix her slip-up while shaking with nerves. She screams out a quick excuse about monsters, trying to pivot the conversation before things get even more awkward. She improvises a theory that tunnel monsters are attracted to shiny things, suggesting there might be hidden gems causing the infestation.
She barely manages to finish her excuse, feeling a massive sense of relief as the Duke listens to her analysis.
The Duke is genuinely surprised that a commoner can read, let alone analyze a complex mining report with such insight.
He even goes as far as calling her a bit of a genius for connecting the dots that his experts missed. Without wasting another second, the Duke tells Olive to draw up a temporary employment contract for her immediately.
Marin is beaming with joy, realizing she just secured the bag and saved her future.
Before she leaves, the Duke notes that her wrist looks as thin as a twig and orders Olive to feed her properly.
Marin is a bit offended, thinking her wrist is fine and his hands are just abnormally large.
The Duke reflects on the strange woman, noting that her voice is the only one that doesn't irritate his hypersensitive ears. We learn about the Baines family secret where their senses are evolved far beyond normal human limits. After being blinded by a monster, his hearing became so sharp that most voices feel like thunder striking his head. He finds Marin's voice pleasant, but because he can hear her racing heartbeat, he knows she's lying and orders a full investigation into her past.
Marin is absolutely losing her mind because she just found out her weekly wage is a whole gold coin.
That is literally an entire month of living expenses for a normal household, making her a total high roller.
She realizes this is the ultimate dream job after Olive explains that her gig is a highly paid specialty role.
She has officially entered the elite circle of the ducal house's workforce.
Hearing about these specialized positions makes Marin recall other legendary characters from the novel. She thinks about Shuren the blacksmith, Kay the shadow, and even the alchemist Zero.
Our girl is so eager to secure her future that she asks if her salary will increase once she becomes permanent. She signs the employment contract instantly without even bothering to read the fine print. As a parting gift, Olive hands her a survival guide for the estate, which Marin treats like a lucky charm. She's convinced this book is the reason she landed the job in the first place.
Marin returns home to her sickly mother, her heart bursting with pure joy and relief. All the noble lies and acting have finally paid off with a job that can save them both.
She walks in with a gift basket overflowing with delicious food, which actually worries her mother at first. Marin has to calm her down by explaining she secured a prestigious role at House Vines. Her mother is overcome with gratitude, believing that the ducal house is a place of absolute trust and safety. Little does she know, her daughter is working for a man who hears everything like thunder.
Despite the happiness, Marin feels a sharp pang of guilt for lying to the Duke about her commoner status.
She knows he never would have looked at her if he knew she was a fallen noble lady. She reflects on why the Duke hates noble women, as so many of them approach him with shady motives.
This disgust is why Marin has to keep her true identity hidden at all costs.
Marin resolves to save every penny she earns and quit before the original female lead arrives. She has no intention of being a character in the Duke's messy main romance. She dreams of moving her mother to a bigger house with a beautiful flower garden far away from the novel's plot. A quiet life of luxury is the only ending she's interested in. Her plans are thrown into total chaos when she is told to go home for several days. Marin immediately spirals into a panic, assuming she's being fired after only one day. In a fit of total desperation, Marin makes a huge scene and shouts that she'd rather die than lose her job. Her financial trauma is coming out in the most dramatic way possible. Suddenly, the Duke himself emerges from the shadows to ask why she is so keen on dying. Marin is instantly paralyzed with embarrassment because her boss caught her mid-breakdown.
The smell of blood coming from the Duke triggers a traumatic memory of the carriage accident.
Marin starts feeling faint as her past life trauma resurfaces in the worst moment.
Once Olive clears up the misunderstanding, a guilty Marin realizes the Duke is actually injured.
She feels bad for her outburst, knowing he's working through pain instead of resting. The Duke demands she start the report immediately, but Marin tries to keep a nervous distance. He shuts that down quickly, sternly commanding her to stop being weird and come closer.
The tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a knife as Duke Gerald commands Marin to step closer.
His aura is so terrifyingly intense that our girl accidentally lets out a startled squeak that definitely wasn't in the job description. The Duke isn't letting anything slide and demands to know why she was holding back her voice earlier.
Marin has to think fast, explaining that she was just trying to be a considerate employee by not blasting his ears with loud noises.
She drops a major deduction, admitting she figured out that losing his sight might have turned his hearing into a hypersensitive superpower.
She's basically telling him she knows his ears are his biggest strength and his biggest weakness.
Internally, the Duke is absolutely floored.
He can't believe a random temporary worker just decoded the top-secret Bynes family bloodline trait that usually takes years to understand.
As Marin settles into work, a stray beam of light peeks through the curtains like a spotlight on a crime scene.
It hits the Duke's ear and reveals a sight that makes Marin's heart stop.
She sees actual blood and immediately goes into full panic mode. But the Duke just waves it off like it's a tiny paper cut, claiming it's a minor scratch that will be gone by tomorrow. Marin isn't buying his tough guy act for a second.
She argues that if she can literally smell the blood from across the room, the injury is way too serious to be ignored.
The Duke finally drops the most chilling truth of the night, calmly stating that he was the one who stabbed his own ear.
Marin is frozen in horror at the thought of someone being that desperate. She realizes that the world must have been screaming at him so loudly that physical pain was his only way to find silence.
The thought of him suffering that much in total darkness is enough to make anyone's skin crawl.
This moment changes everything for Marin.
She stops seeing the Duke as just a cool character from a book and starts seeing him as a real person who is carrying a mountain of agony. She's hit with a massive wave of shame for treating his life like just a collection of fun novel spoilers.
Before she can stop herself, the tears start flowing because she finally feels the weight of his tragic reality.
The Duke is completely baffled by why his new assistant is suddenly having a breakdown over his injury. Their awkward emotional moment is saved, or ruined, when Olive walks in with another stack of boring reports. Marin wipes her eyes and forces her professional voice actor skills to take over. She grinds through the rest of the paperwork for the night, proving she's still the best reader in the Empire. Just as she's about to clock out, the Duke goes back to his favorite hobby, roasting her appearance. He tells her yet again that her wrist looks like a fragile little twig that might snap at any moment. He gives her a bizarre order to go home, eat some food, and come back for a physical checkup.
Marin leaves the room feeling totally confused, wondering why her boss cares so much about her BMI.
Once the room is empty, the Duke's playful mood vanishes.
He reflects on the secret report from his right-hand man, Kay, who has been digging through Marin's trash and her past. He now has all the tea. She is actually Lady Marin Schwentz, a highborn daughter of a viscount whose life was destroyed by a carriage accident and massive debt. She's been living in a rundown hut while taking care of her sick mother. Gerald is still highly suspicious of why a noble lady would sneak into his castle in a commoner's disguise. He labels her as a dangerous and unpredictable variable, but he can't deny that she's the most interesting person he's met in a long time.
Marin finally enters her brand new office, and the sheer luxury of the place is enough to give her a heart attack.
She can't even handle the excitement of using furniture that probably costs more than a commoner's life savings.
While getting comfortable at her desk, our girl can't stop thinking about the Duke's bloody ear, and asks Olive if it is truly alright to leave such a wound untreated.
Olive shares the same worry but explains the Duke is a total nightmare with physical contact, refusing to let anyone or anything touch his body for medical treatment.
The plot thickens when Olive reveals that the Duke is also a chronic insomniac, a detail that Marin realizes was never even mentioned in the original novel.
Marin figures out that his superpower senses are basically acting like a loud construction site in his brain, making it impossible for him to get any shut-eye. Despite her desire to stay low-key, she can't help but suggest Olive try giving the Duke some warm wine, a classic trick her mom used to help her drift off to sleep. To keep her undercover role as a commoner convincing, Marin asks Olive to stop being formal and they both agree to just use their first names like actual work besties. The perks of working for a Duke are elite because Olive drops a literal mountain of snacks on her desk, explaining the boss specifically ordered her to be fattened up. Marin is absolutely living for the food and even asks if she can sneak a piece of cake home to her mother, feeling totally touched by the unexpected kindness. Suddenly, the legendary head butler Sebastian enters the office, and Marin recognizes him as a former Night Vice Commander and the Duke's most loyal follower. Sebastian wants to say thanks for his grandson's wedding gift, but even the head butler is hit with a rejection because the Duke's private room is strictly off-limits. Olive introduces Marin as the special hire who reports directly to the big man himself, hyping up her exceptional reporting skills to the former knight.
Sebastian is incredibly impressed that someone finally satisfied the Duke's high standards and offers Marin his full support for anything she might need in the castle.
Marin is internally panicking because she realizes that if this powerful and intense group of followers ever finds out she's a liar, she is absolutely cooked.
Later that night, Olive brings the warm wine to the Duke's room, giving all the credit to Marin's recommendation while the Duke questions if such a simple remedy will work.
Olive drops the final bomb by pointing out Marin's literacy and elegant teacup habits, leading the Duke to suspect she's a ruined noble spy who might be dangerous.
Marin is finally feeling like a top-tier daughter, carrying a heavy load of supplies and enjoying the fact that her mother is finally regaining her appetite.
She's focused on earning even more money to make sure her mom gets the nutrition she needs to recover. But the peaceful vibes are instantly killed when she gets home and discovers her front door standing wide open for the whole world to see. She rushes inside to find her entire world turned upside down, as her humble home has been completely trashed by someone looking for trouble. Her heart drops when she finds her mother trembling on the floor, struggling to catch her breath amidst the absolute chaos of their destroyed belongings.
Through tears, her mother drops a massive bombshell. The landlord's wife went into a jealous rage and falsely accused Marin of being her husband's secret mistress. That vengeful woman didn't just break their furniture, she delivered a cold ultimatum that the rent must be paid by tomorrow or they'll be kicked out on the street immediately.
Marin is absolutely heartbroken to realize that in all that violence, the only thing her mother could manage to protect was a single vanity. Overwhelmed with guilt for not stopping the landlord's creepy advances sooner, Marin resolves to go back to the Duke's castle right away to beg for help.
She arrives at the castle gates deep into the night, but the guards are acting suspicious because they've never seen this random girl before and don't want to let her pass.
After a tense wait while her identity is verified by the butler, Marin finally manages to get a desperate audience with Olive to explain her nightmare situation.
Setting aside her noble pride, she begs for a portion of her weekly pay in advance, explaining that her sick mother will be homeless if she doesn't get the gold. Olive is sympathetic to her struggle, but he explains that every single financial decision in this house has to come directly from the Duke himself.
Marin is led to the Duke's inner sanctum and told she has to go in alone to plead her case for the emergency funds.
The Duke greets her request with zero warmth, coldly demanding to know exactly what a lowly assistant thinks she can offer a Duke in exchange for such a huge favor.
While scanning the room for any kind of answer, Marin spots a glass of wine and realizes the Duke is physically struggling because he hasn't been able to sleep.
She makes a bold play, proposing that she can use her professional reading skills to help him fall into a restful sleep, just like she does for her own mother. The Duke immediately gets suspicious about how she discovered his private battle with insomnia, forcing Marin to quickly blame it on a slip of info from Olive. To her total shock, the Duke actually accepts the deal and hits her with a blunt command to start the sleeping process right then and there.
Duke Gerald finally accepts the deal to have Marin read him to sleep and immediately starts asking about her daily commute.
He's already calculating how much time he's losing while his personal human lullaby travels back and forth. Once he hears it takes an hour to get home, he gives Olive a direct command to move Marin and her entire family into the castle annex by tomorrow morning. The Duke isn't wasting any more time with long-distance service.
Marin is absolutely stunned as she realizes her homeless era is officially over.
In one single conversation, she managed to fix her housing crisis and her empty bank account at the same time.
To make things even better, the Duke orders an immediate advance payment so Marin can settle all her messy affairs before moving in.
She's finally holding the gold that will change her mother's life.
While walking back to the office, Marin starts to wonder if her role is shifting from a top-tier assistant to a high-class nanny for a grumpy Duke.
The irony of reading a grown man to sleep isn't lost on her. Gerald watches her leave, clearly intrigued by the mystery surrounding her. He's confident that having her live at his estate will make it way easier to dig up all the secrets she's trying to hide. Marin borrows a horse and rides like the wind back to her shack, finding her poor mother waiting outside in the cold because she was worried sick. It's a bittersweet reunion after such a high-stakes night. She drops the life-changing news right away, telling her mom they are moving into the servants' annex at the actual Vines castle. She's basically telling her mom they just won the medieval lottery.
Her mother is skeptical at first, thinking it's too good to be true, until Marin explains that the Duke is even sending a grand carriage to pick them up.
The reality of their situation finally starts to sink in. Overcome with relief, her mother starts praising Duke Vines as the ultimate guardian of the West.
She truly believes they are under the protection of a saintly man.
Seeing her mother smile brightly for the first time in years makes Marin feel like every lie she told the Duke was 100% worth it.
She takes one last look at the miserable shack they've called home, satisfied that their days of living in a rundown dump are officially over.
While Marin is dreaming of her new life, the landlord's wife is busy reaching peak levels of toxicity, vowing to tear Marin's hair out for an affair she totally made up in her head.
She is fueled by pure jealousy and doesn't care that her target is a hardworking daughter just trying to survive. The landlord himself is mostly just panicking about his wallet, wondering who else would be desperate enough to rent his disgusting property if Marin leaves.
The greedy couple finally corners Marin, thinking they still have her under their thumb with the threat of eviction.
Marin stands her ground and shuts them up instantly by casually slamming down a bag full of actual gold coins for the rent.
Their jaws hit the floor when they realize their financial leverage just vanished into thin air thanks to the Duke's advance payment.
The landlord is left speechless, wondering how a girl who was begging for time yesterday suddenly became a high roller overnight.
The tension in the air is electric as the truth about their manipulation and greed finally starts to backfire on them.
Marin isn't done yet. She lets out all her righteous fury at the wife for having the audacity to lay a hand on her sick and defenseless mother. She is completely transformed from a quiet victim into a woman who will destroy anyone that threatens her family. In the ultimate Uno reverse move, Marin drops a tactical nuke on their marriage by exposing the landlord's real affair with Windeye, the stable-keeper's wife. She basically lights their entire relationship on fire and walks away while the sparks fly. The toxic couple immediately forgets about Marin and starts a violent brawl with each other right in the middle of the street.
Their lies and greed have finally caught up to them, leaving them in a total mess of their own making.
Butler Sebastian doesn't just send a carriage, he pulls up personally in a grand vehicle to rescue Marin and her mother from this neighborhood of nightmares. Marin is completely blown away that a high-ranking official like Seabass would come all this way so early in the morning just to escort a simple temporary assistant. The showdown with the landlord reaches a boiling point as Giorno gets cocky, suggesting Marin must have found some rich old man to pay off her debts. Marin doesn't even flinch, immediately shutting him down by revealing she knows this entire territory and the very mountain they stand on belongs to House Vines. Our girl exposes the landlord's illegal hustle, pointing out that while the Duke allowed cabins for hunters to rest, he definitely never authorized a greedy couple to extort rent from the poor.
Giorno starts sweating bullets as he realizes his free money scheme just hit a massive legal wall.
Just when the tension is about to explode, head butler Sebastian enters the chat like an absolute legend. He doesn't waste a second, ordering his men to haul the corrupt couple away for their crimes against the Duke's laws. Giorno and his wife start begging for mercy like their lives depend on it, but Marin stays cold as ice. She firmly tells them that they need to be punished for the physical harm they dared to cause her mother.
Marin drops a surprising truth, admitting she knew the rent was a total scam from the very start.
She only kept her mouth shut because it was the only affordable roof she could find, but the moment her mother's safety was threatened, all bets were off. As Marin introduces her mother, Rona, to the butler, Sebastian notices her incredibly graceful and noble greeting.
This perfectly timed politeness confirms every suspicion the Duke's inner circle had about Marin's true background. Sebastian is internally reeling, wondering why on earth the Duke wants to keep a lying noble girl so close to him.
Even though he's suspicious, he decides to follow orders and keep a hawk-like watch on her every move. With their meager life packed into a grand carriage, Marin watches her mother drive away toward a better future.
She makes a silent vow to herself that she will never return to the place that brought them so much pain and misery.
Upon arriving at the Duke's estate, Marin is completely speechless at the beauty of the castle annex. She can't wrap her head around the fact that such a luxurious, sun-drenched space is actually meant for servants. The butler drops another flex, revealing that the entire third floor has been cleared out exclusively for Marin and her mother. He basically gives them a blank check to choose any room that fits their vibe. Marin is introduced to Yulia, a young red-haired maid assigned to serve them personally. However, the moment she sees Yulia's face, Marin is hit with a nagging feeling that she has seen this girl somewhere before.
Noticing how nervous the young maid is, Marin tries to be the chill boss and encourages Yulia to drop the formalities.
She wants them all to start this new chapter in the castle without the constant fear of social standing.
During a fancy dinner, Rona can't help but feel a deep-seated dread.
She warns Marin that all this boundless kindness will vanish in an instant the moment the Duke finds out they've been lying about who they are.
Marin realizes her mother is 100% right. The day their lies are discovered, they could end up just like Giorno.
She resolves to become so indispensable as the Duke's assistant that he literally won't be able to kick her out.
Back at the main castle, the Duke learns about the assault on Marin's mother and lets out a terrifying smile that sends shivers down Olive's spine.
It's clear that the Duke is about to make someone regret ever being born.
Gerald issues a brutal sentence, ordering the confiscation of all the landlord's assets and 5 years of hard labor. He goes even further, demanding the wife's hands be rendered useless as punishment for daring to slap Rona. As night falls, the Duke's heightened senses begin to spiral out of control, making his head feel like it's going to explode. The constant noise and pain becomes so unbearable that he actually starts wishing for death just to escape the mental storm.
In his darkest hour of agony, the Duke clings to the memory of Marin's promise to help him sleep. He's desperate for her to succeed where everyone else has failed before he completely loses his mind to the madness of his own senses.
Marin steps into the massive, awe-inspiring library of house vines and is instantly hit with the intoxicating scent of old books.
Her heart is pounding not because of a monster attack, but because she's a total bookworm who has finally found her paradise.
She quickly snaps out of her daydream and reminds herself that she's on a high-stakes mission to find the most boring book in existence.
Putting the Duke to sleep is her ticket to securing another gold coin, and she is 100% ready to secure that bag. After scanning the shelves for dry philosophy and endless history texts, her eyes land on a thick book about herbology.
She decides to pivot her strategy, wondering if a little botanical knowledge might be the secret to the Duke's recovery.
Suddenly, a major plot point from the original novel flashes through her mind involving a legendary herb called mandrelasong.
She recalls that the novel's heroine eventually heals the Duke's blindness with this mysterious plant, but the book never actually described what it looked like.
Marin decides to take matters into her own hands and starts a deep-dive research mission, whispering the name to herself as she searches the library. She's hoping to find the cure before the official plot even starts, but she's about to get a major surprise. Her quiet search is interrupted by a high-pitched voice, and she turns around to find an incredibly adorable child watching her every move. This little kid has eyes that are way too sharp for someone his age, and Marin is instantly on high alert.
She soon realizes this isn't just a random kid roaming the halls, but the Duke's genius alchemist friend Giorno.
It turns out this cold and dignified genius took a special potion to turn himself back into a child, and the results are dangerously cute. Despite looking like a kindergartner, Giorno acts like a total gentleman and even takes Marin's hand for a formal greeting. Our girl is left completely flustered by the sheer contrast between his baby face and his mature, noble actions. Marin tries to stick to her commoner assistant act by using polite honorifics, but the pint-sized genius isn't buying it for a second. Giorno immediately calls her out, telling her she's a terrible liar and that her noble aura is leaking through her commoner disguise.
When she asks about the legendary herb, Giorno drops a truth bomb that nearly knocks her over. Mandrelasong is just a common weed.
He laughs and says the plant grows like crazy all over the castle grounds and along every single road in the territory.
To prove his point, Giorno shows Marin his own signature on the herbology book, revealing that he is actually the famous author himself. The tiny alchemist is dropping flexes left and right, proving he's the most prestigious brain in the entire estate. Marin looks at the illustration in the book and is absolutely shocked to see that this legendary plant looks exactly like a common dandelion. In her previous life, these were just things you blew on to make a wish, not high-level magical ingredients. Giorno explains that while the flowers have a refreshing mint scent, the plant has zero known medicinal uses to the public. He's basically telling her she's chasing a dream that doesn't exist, as far as the scientific community is concerned. Then comes the real shocker: Mandrelasong is actually a poisonous plant that causes nasty stomach aches.
Marin is left in a state of total confusion, wondering why on earth the novel's heroine would feed the Duke a toxic weed to heal him.
Our protagonist is spiraling as she tries to make sense of the novel's logic versus the reality in front of her.
She realized that the original heroine must have possessed a special secret to neutralize the poison that no one else knows.
Marin quickly decides that trying to replicate the cure herself is way too dangerous, as giving the Duke poison is a much bigger crime than just telling a lie. She doesn't want to accidentally end her boss while trying to be a hero.
She's hit with a massive wave of guilt, feeling like a fake for knowing how to end the Duke's pain but choosing to do nothing.
She's basically pretending she's just a regular employee while watching the man suffer in total silence. Ultimately, she resolves to stick to her plan and not interfere with the main character's destinies.
She decides to just wait for the fated heroine to appear and save him, hoping she can survive the drama until then.
Marin enters the lion's den with a heavy heart, basically begging the Duke if they can just take a rain check on their session for today.
But Duke Gerald isn't the type to let anyone off the hook, coldly reminding her that a promise to him is as solid as a mountain.
Our girl is clearly not feeling the confidence vibes yet, trying to delay the inevitable. The Duke isn't having it and commands her to hurry over for her scheduled weight check. When he reaches out to check her wrist, Marin gets so flustered that she accidentally offers him her hand instead. The Duke catches the mistake instantly, leaving her looking like a deer in headlights. Gerald can't resist a bit of sarcasm, teasingly asking if she's trying to be trained like a pet dog.
Marin is internally dying of embarrassment, realizing she just turned a serious checkup into a total comedy routine.
He notes that her wrist is still as thin as a twig, proving his feeding program hasn't quite kicked in yet. Marin insists she's been eating like a champ and promises a glow-up is coming any day now. To kick off the session, Marin pulls out a book of fairy tales, claiming they are the gold standard for putting someone to sleep. She's ready to use her voice actor skills to turn these kiddie stories into a professional sedative.
The Duke makes a face, expressing his total disdain for boring stories and predictable happy endings.
Even though he thinks it's a waste of time, he gives her the green light to proceed with her bedtime story.
As Marin starts reading the tale of a grateful crow, the Duke finds himself completely mesmerized by the clear and crisp quality of her voice.
It's a sound that actually brings a shred of peace to his chaotic, noise-filled world. Slowly but surely, the most powerful man in the West starts drifting off into the dream world.
In his fading consciousness, he wonders why this mysterious girl sounds like she's constantly apologizing for a secret she can't share.
Suddenly, the Duke's internal alarm bells go off and he snaps himself awake in a total panic.
He looks at Marin with suspicion, wondering if she actually slipped some poison into the room to make him so submissive. He quickly realizes it was just the power of her voice, and he notices a pleasant scent around her that reminds him of warm sunshine and fresh grass.
It's a sensory experience that is far too wholesome for the dark castle he lives in. Marin is over the moon when she hears she actually managed to make him doze off. But the Duke shuts down her celebration, bluntly telling her that one short nap is more than enough for now. In a rare moment of vulnerability, he admits he's terrified of sleeping too deeply. He's scared that if he lets go of his control, he might slip away and never wake up to face his world again. Later on, Olive is absolutely floored to hear that the Duke actually caught some Z's.
He praises Marin like she's a miracle worker for achieving what no legendary doctor could ever manage.
Even though Marin feels like the nap was way too short to be effective, Olive doesn't care. He rewards her with the promised gold coin, making her officially the highest-paid human lullaby in the Empire. A whole week passes and the Duke is suddenly acting like Marin has a contagious plague, actively avoiding her. This leaves our poor girl buried under mountains of paperwork in total isolation. Marin's frustration reaches a breaking point as she privately calls the Duke a total coward. She's annoyed that he's so afraid of his own basic need for sleep that he's sabotaging the best help he's ever had. Her terrible week gets even darker when she stumbles upon a scene of other servants ganging up on poor Yuria. The toxic rumors are spreading faster than a wildfire, with the bullies having the audacity to spew venom about Marin's character. The vibes are absolutely rancid as the servants start calling Marin a common courtesan right in front of her maid.
They think they can get away with it, but they are about to learn that Marin isn't the quiet background character they think she is.
Our drama kicks off with a group of palace maids who clearly watched too many villainous movies, cornering young Yuria and spewing absolute venom about Marin being a lowly courtesan. They even have the nerve to drag Marin's mother Rona into the mud, mocking her as a common harlot who's just pretending to be fancy noble material. Yuria tries to be a loyal shield for her lady, but the head maid loses her cool and prepares to give the girl a one-way ticket to a slapfest. Just in time, Marin teleports into the scene, catching the woman's hand midair like a total boss and asking who gave them permission to raise a hand against her people. Marin stands her ground with zero fear, staring down the bullies and refusing to let them treat her like trash just because she's a temporary assistant. She hits them with a cold command to let go of Yuria, proving that the Duke's favor isn't just for show. Things escalate quickly from a verbal roast to a full-blown physical lesson time as the maids start mocking Marin's high and mighty attitude.
The group of bullies decides it is time to gank Marin, clearly forgetting that she isn't her average background character.
Marin decides that if they want a fight, she is happy to give them a knockout performance, refusing to take their abuse lying down.
A chaotic scuffle breaks out, and our girl proves she can throw hands just as well as she can read reports.
Yuria joins the fray to help her lady, but the numbers game is stacked against them in this palace royal rumble.
Marin gets down and dirty in the brawl, showing a side of herself that the Duke has definitely never seen before.
The struggle reaches a peak with Marin getting pinned down by the angry mob of maids who seem determined to win this physical conversation.
Marin finds herself stuck and unable to move as the toxic atmosphere gets heavier by the second. Just as things are looking like a total disaster, head butler Sebastian enters the chat to break up the commotion with his legendary authority.
The sight of the maids literally sitting on the Duke's guest is enough to make the butler's blood pressure skyrocket.
Sebastian is absolutely floored when Yuria spills the tea about how the staff insulted Marin and Rona with such filthy, low-tier language.
He realizes his management has been a total fail if his people think they can act like street thugs.
The butler goes into full discipline mode, declaring that tarnishing the honor of House Vines by calling guests harlots is a crime worthy of having your tongue deleted.
The bullies realize they just earned themselves a one-way trip to a very dark punishment.
Sebastian bows down in a deep apology for the embarrassment, but Marin isn't looking for a simple sorry.
While she could ignore the insults to her own name, she makes it crystal clear that she will never forgive anyone who targets her mother's dignity.
Marin requests a specific flavor of justice, asking that these loudmouthed maids be reassigned to the garbage dump where they can bully the trash instead. It's a savage yet perfect sentence that leaves the bullies begging for mercy they didn't show earlier. Olive arrives on the scene and is visibly shaken to find Marin looking like she just survived a survival horror game. He tries to rush her to a doctor, but it turns out the big boss Duke is already calling for her presence.
Despite her injuries, Marin is dragged to the Duke's room, where Gerald's hypersensitive nose instantly detects the metallic scent of blood on her.
He demands to know what kind of physical debate his assistant has been having behind his back. The temperature in the room drops below zero when the Duke hears they called Marin a courtesan, and he instantly orders Olive to go cut out their tongues. Marin has to jump in and play peacekeeper, convincing the Duke that her garbage dump punishment is more than enough. Gerald finds her fighting spirit surprisingly amusing, calling her a total warrior who seems to be a mess every single time they interact. He's clearly impressed by her bravery, even though she looks like a disaster right now. In a rare moment of semi-kindness, the blind ruler reaches out to touch her torn sleeve and orders a dressmaker to give her a complete wardrobe upgrade. But before Marin can get any romantic ideas, he warns her not to misunderstand the intent behind the gift, leaving our girl totally confused.
Imagine receiving a beautiful dress from a handsome duke, only to find out it actually means he wants to own you body and soul.
Marin is about to learn that in this world, fashion choices come with some very heavy strings attached. The atmosphere is thick with tension as the Duke hands over a gift but immediately drops a cold warning for Marin not to misunderstand the meaning behind it.
Poor Marin is left standing there completely baffled, wondering how anyone could find a hidden agenda in a simple piece of clothing.
After Olive is dismissed, Marin tries to settle back into her duties, but she is still shaking off the weird vibes from the Duke's cryptic message.
She even brings a book along, which doesn't escape the Duke's sharp senses as he questions if she plans on reading to him again.
Marin awkwardly asks if he would like to hear more, feeling the heat rise to her face because she knows he heard her calling him a coward earlier. The Duke shuts that down quickly, proving he has plenty of backbone by inviting her to start the next chapter of the history book. The story shifts to the Sarin Desert, a brutal landscape sandwiched between the Oman and Sanders empires where thousands of monster species thrive. This is the legendary battleground where the Duke of Vine's family earned their keep by acting as the empire's ultimate shield. Historically, the Vine's family was responsible for keeping the desert horrors at bay, and the narrative describes a past campaign where victory seemed certain. However, just as they were ready to head home, things took a dark turn when their scouts started vanishing without a trace.
The Duke recalls the frustration of being unable to advance because none of his scouts were returning from the search.
Eventually, the cause of the disappearances is found, but the discovery is so horrifying that it has to be seen to be believed. They find a monster that doesn't just use claws or teeth, it uses a scent so sweet it makes the nose tingle and lures humans into a deadly trance.
It is a psychological trap designed to paralyze an entire army before they even realize they are in danger.
Seeing his men in jeopardy, the Duke orders everyone to cover their noses and retreat as far away as possible. His soldiers are terrified that he is taking on too many monsters alone, but the Duke knows that only he has the strength to fight while resisting the lure. He charges toward the center of the blooming monster, aiming straight for the host creature hidden deep within the vines. It is a high-stakes gamble where one wrong move means becoming monster food in the middle of a desert wasteland. At the climax of the strike, a flash of light like a lightning bolt explodes before his eyes, searing his vision.
When the light fades and he finally opens his eyes, he realizes that the world has been replaced by an eternal, soul-crushing darkness. With the tragic secret of his blindness finally out in the open, Marin wishes him pleasant dreams as he finally drifts off into a rare sleep.
It seems her presence is the only thing that can actually bring peace to his tortured mind.
The Duke wakes up after just 1 hour feeling completely revitalized, which is a miracle considering his constant state of pain.
Yet, he still views Marin as a dangerous woman who could either be his ultimate salvation or a trap that keeps him in agony forever. Marin returns to her room and finds a very worried Yuria, but she quickly reassures the maid that she didn't get in trouble with the Duke. She can tell Yuria has been through a lot, and she is not about to let her friend suffer in silence anymore. Taking a stand, Marin tells Yuria never to say that being bullied is okay and promises to fight right alongside her if anyone bothers her again. It is a powerful moment of sisterhood that goes beyond just being a lady and her maid. Deeply moved by the protection, Yuria begs Marin to drop the formalities and just speak to her as a friend. Marin can't say no to those puppy dog eyes and agrees to be more informal, strengthening their bond even further. As Yuria offers to mend Marin's torn dress, the conversation shifts back to the Duke's gift, and Marin casually asks if there is any special meaning behind being given clothes.
She thinks it's just a random question, but Yuria's face goes completely pale as she explains the Western tradition.
The bombshell finally drops. In the West, giving someone clothes is a symbolic way of saying the giver wants to possess them. Marin is left in total shock, finally realizing that the Duke's warning wasn't just him being arrogant, he was literally warning her about his own claim of ownership.
What do you do when a Duke is so rich he threatens to buy an entire dress shop just to force you to go shopping? While most girls would be living the dream, Marin is so stressed she is actually planning to poison herself just to pay him back. Talk about taking gratitude to a whole new, deadly level. Marin heads to the reception room as instructed and comes face to face with a woman named Iders Mill. This isn't just any tailor, she is a high-end designer from the famous Gloria dress shop. Marin is internally screaming because she recognizes Iders as the exclusive designer for the story's original female lead. It is like a commoner suddenly getting a private appointment with a celebrity stylist to the stars. The real shocker comes when Iders reveals that Duke Gerald commissioned dresses for both Marin and her mother, Rona. Marin is deeply moved, realizing the Duke has a much softer, more caring side than he lets on. As measurements begin, Iders' professional eyes start twitching. She notices that despite Marin's modest background, her refined mannerisms and noble aura are way too polished for a commoner. Iders starts having wild fantasies that these aren't just dresses, but could eventually lead to a wedding gown commission. She sees Marin as her golden ticket to save her failing shop and go viral among the elite. With dollar signs in her eyes, the designer resolves to create the most exquisite outfits humanly possible for the future Duchess. She is ready to stake the entire reputation of the Gloria dress shop on this one job. The catalog comes out, and it is a fashionista's dream filled with rare Western styles and beautiful winter designs. Everything is stunning, but Marin is still trying to keep her head on straight despite the sparkly temptations. Staying true to her practical nature, Marin insists she only needs one simple, comfortable dress for work. She even tries to give up her own portion of the gift so her mother can have an extra high-quality outfit instead. That is when Iders drops the Duke's bizarre ultimatum. Gerald totally predicted Marin would be humble and issued a threat. He told the designer that if the women didn't pick enough clothes, he would just buy the entire shop's collection out of spite. Marin is left reeling from the weight of such aggressive generosity.
She feels like she is receiving far more than she deserves, and the guilt starts to pile up as high as the new dresses.
Later, Marin runs into Zero, who immediately calls her out for looking like she just lost her best friend instead of winning the lottery. She confesses that the Duke's constant kindness is starting to feel like a heavy burden she can't repay. Zero just shrugs it off, explaining that the Duke is basically walking money since House Vines manages the exclusive desert trade routes.
Apparently, the man has actual mountains of gold, so a few hundred dresses are like pocket change to him.
Despite knowing he is filthy rich, Marin is determined to find a way to be useful. She starts grilling Zero about the effects of Mandelsung poison, pretending she is just curious about it being used as medicine. After tricking Zero into promising her some stomachache medicine, Marin makes a truly insane decision. She decides that since the poison is so dangerous for the Duke, she is going to test it by eating it herself first.
Imagine trying to act like a sophisticated lady, while your internal organs are basically staging a coup because you decided to eat toxic flowers for a snack.
Marin is about to find out that the path to a Duke's heart is paved with extreme intestinal distress and a very public sprint to the bathroom. Our girl Marin successfully tracks down the Mandrelasong flowers on the castle grounds, and they are much bigger than she ever imagined. She knows she needs to extract the juice for her secret project, so she starts picking as many as she can carry. Realizing she is running dangerously late for her meeting with the Duke, she decides to skip the whole extraction process.
In a move that she will definitely regret later, she just starts chewing the raw flowers while rushing to the Duke's side.
The second she steps into the room, the Duke's supernatural senses go into overdrive. He immediately catches the fragrant scent of the flowers she literally just swallowed, proving once again that you can't hide anything from this man. Marin awkwardly admits she was snacking on Flora, claiming she just needed something to chew on.
This leads to a hilarious exchange, where the Duke wonders if his staff is actually starving her to death.
The Duke drops a teasing bombshell, saying he clearly needs to try harder to keep her temporary mouth entertained. Marin's brain basically short-circuits as she tries to figure out exactly what kind of entertainment he is implying.
Desperate to change the subject, she starts reading a fairy tale about a beautiful daughter and her mother.
But things get weird when the story turns into a drama about a widow finding a new father for her kid.
Just as the plot thickens, the toxic flower snack decides it's time for revenge.
Marin is hit with an agonizing stomachache that makes it impossible to continue, and she is internally screaming at her digestive system to read the room. The pain becomes so intense that she can't even fake it anymore. Giving a hurried and pathetic apology, she pulls a disappearing act and bolts from the room to find the nearest bathroom.
Left in the silence of her wake, the Duke actually loses it and starts laughing his head off.
He is genuinely amused because every other noble lady tries to be a perfect doll, while Marin is the first one to ever sprint away like a track star. Meanwhile, Marin is hiding in a sea of pure, unadulterated embarrassment.
She is convinced she can never show her face to him again after his laughter confirmed the total destruction of her dignity.
Back at her room, Yuria shows up with a delivery of stomach meds sent by the Duke's aide. Marin is physically fine, but her heart is basically dead from the shame of knowing the whole staff probably knows about her little incident. Yuria spots the leftovers of the Mandrella song and drops some ancient wisdom.
She explains that if you turn the plant into a paste, it's actually a miracle cure for fevers and heat rather than a deadly snack.
It turns out Yuria used this trick on her twin brother, who is currently training as a knight in the castle.
This is Marin's huge epiphany. She realizes that while the plant is toxic when eaten, it might be the secret key to soothing the Duke's pain if she applies it to his skin.
The next evening, Marin gathers her courage and actually returns to the Duke's chambers.
He is visibly surprised she showed her face, but she is ready to get down to business with a special request for him to trust her.
Things are getting spicy in the Duke's chambers as Gerald teasingly asks Marin if she is finally making her move and declaring her intention to lay her hands on him.
Marin goes into a full-blown panic, flusteredly denying any naughty intent and clarifying that she only wants to touch him with a special herbal remedy, not her bare hands.
The Duke isn't making it easy for her and jokingly asks if her big plan involves attacking him with a knife or some other sharp object instead.
Marin finally explains that she has prepared a soothing salve made from crushed flowers to help fix his constant, painful headaches.
Gerald tries to play it cool and claims he is perfectly fine, but Marin isn't taking no for an answer and begs him to trust her and try the cooling treatment for his own good. The Duke eventually folds to her persistence and lets her proceed, but he is confused when she starts applying the paste directly to his eyes instead of his forehead.
Marin explains the logic behind her traditional folk remedy, claiming that cooling the internal heat trapped in the eyes is the secret to relieving deep-seated tension.
Gerald is still skeptical and wonders if he is being used as a guinea pig, questioning why her fingers are pressing so firmly during the application. While she works, Marin falls into a total trance, thinking about how the Duke is still ridiculously handsome, even with a pile of green herbal gunk covering half his face.
Gerald snaps her back to reality by asking when she actually plans to start reading the book she brought, as she got way too distracted staring at his face. As she reads, Marin notices a weird pattern where the Duke wakes up the exact second the story ends, so she starts picking the longest fairy tales possible to keep him in dreamland. After the session, the Duke's sharp nose immediately identifies the scent of the paste as Mandela song, the same weed Marin was caught snacking on the day before.
For the first time since he lost his sight, Gerald feels a miracle happen as the constant fire and burning sensation in his eyes finally disappear.
Later that night, the Duke summons alchemist Zero in his adult form, who shows up looking absolutely exhausted and complaining about being dragged out of bed. Olive reveals that Zero has been on a 3-day grind developing a new cure for the Duke's eyes, which is why he is currently acting like a total cranky mess. The Duke asks about Mandela song only to find out Zero has also taken a liking to Marin, with the alchemist even asking if he can have her for himself.
Gerald shuts that idea down with an icy glare, reminding Zero that Marin isn't a prize to be won and declaring with full authority that she is already his.
The Duke just dropped a total bombshell by declaring that Marin is already his, leaving alchemist Zero absolutely reeling. Gerald has spent his entire life dodging the seductions of noble ladies, so hearing him claim a girl like this is basically a world-ending event for his staff. Zero immediately grills Olive to see if the Duke has ever said something so possessive before, but the aide confirms this is brand new behavior. It looks like things are about to get very interesting in the castle, and Zero is definitely here for the drama.
Meanwhile, a totally clueless Marin arrives at the Duke's side, wondering if she is in trouble again or if he wants to talk about the Mandela song herb.
She notices that he hasn't complained about her recent medical experiments, so she figures she might be in the clear. Looking at him closely, Marin starts feeling a bit bad for the guy because his skin is paler than a ghost from living in a dark room.
Between the zero sunlight and the lack of sleep, she begins to wonder if his health is actually hanging by a thread.
Out of nowhere, the Duke decides to get generous and offers Marin a reward for all her hard work. He tells her to name any wish she wants, but then he turns it into a high-stakes game by giving her a 10-second countdown to decide. Marin's brain totally short-circuits under the pressure of the ticking clock. She is panicking internally, begging for just a moment to think of something useful while the Duke keeps counting down like a human ticking bomb.
With the clock hitting zero, Marin blurts out the first thing that comes to her mind: a walk.
She immediately wants to crawl into a hole and die for picking something so simple when she could have asked for literally anything else. To save face, she tries to explain that fresh air is a medical necessity, even comparing the Duke's needs to a puppy that has to go outside daily. She is basically treating one of the most powerful men in the Empire like a golden retriever, and she knows it. The Duke looks at her with a straight face and asks if he looks like he's lacking in the exercise department.
Marin is crying on the inside, regretting that she didn't just ask him to spare her life for whatever happens in the future.
Gerald finds the whole puppy comparison hilarious and decides to grant the wish right then and there. He tells her to get ready because they are actually going through with this moonlit stroll. They head out into the gardens, and the scenery is absolutely stunning under the moonlight.
Marin realized that she spent so much time picking weeds here that she never noticed how beautiful the castle looks at night.
The night air is pretty chilly, but the Duke rests his hand on Marin's shoulder for support instead of using his cane. She can feel his body heat transferring to her, which is making the whole cold night air situation feel a lot more comfortable.
Gerald is basically having a medical miracle right now as he admits the night air feels incredible and the street lamps don't even hurt his eyes anymore.
Marin's Mandela song paste is seeping in and doing its job so well that for the first time in years, the Duke isn't feeling like his eyes are on fire.
Then comes the big moment every fan has been waiting for as Gerald finally reaches up and unties that blindfold for the first time.
In the pale moonlight, he reveals his real face, and let's just say the visuals are absolutely top tier even without a working pair of eyes.
Marin is literally paralyzed by the sight, thinking those pure white and silver eyes make him look like a mystical fairy born from winter snowflakes.
She is so stunned she forgets how to breathe, which unfortunately makes things a little awkward for our insecure Duke.
Since Marin is being deathly quiet, Gerald starts spiraling into his own trauma, asking if she's scared or if he looks like a disgusting monster to her.
Marin has to snap out of it and reassure him that she only stepped back because he is so breathtakingly beautiful that it caught her off guard. The atmosphere gets incredibly heavy and romantic as Gerald admits he's surprised anyone would call him beautiful. He reaches out to touch her face, whispering about how much of a pity it is that he can't actually see the expression she's making right now. We get a deep dive into Gerald's past where we learn his eyes used to be black before the blindness turned them into the silver color of a monster.
He spent years hiding them in shame, thinking he was losing his humanity, and he is deeply moved that Marin is the first person to treat him like a masterpiece instead of a freak.
But of course, the universe can't let them be happy for 5 minutes because Olive comes sprinting in and totally kills the vibe with a letter.
The peace is instantly shattered as they receive the devastating news that the Count and Countess have passed away, leaving the Duke and Marin in total shock. We start with a rare look at Gerald's childhood, back when he was just a little sprout being teased by his older sister.
She kept calling him a little one because he barely reached her waist, and he was definitely not happy about the lack of respect.
To stop his pouting, his sister pulls out the ultimate bribe, cotton candy that looks exactly like a fluffy cloud. She jokingly tells him she plucked it right from the sky just for him, because apparently she's the best sister ever. She goes full protective big sister mode, promising she could even pluck the stars if he wants them. All she asks in return is a pinky promise that he'll keep playing with her forever. It's a level of wholesome that usually means disaster is coming.
Disaster strikes fast when the Vine's bloodline curse manifests in Gerald way too early.
Suddenly, every sound is a scream and every touch feels like he's being attacked by 1,000 needles. The poor kid is in total agony while his parents can only watch from a distance. The most brutal part?
His sister Monica is actually barred from comforting him because the family secret demands he survives this sensory hell alone. Imagine being 5 years old and having your family watch you cry in pain while they refuse to give you a hug.
Page 22, 23, 24, 25. Fast forward a few years, and Monica returns to the tower one last time to say goodbye before her wedding. She can't even see his face through the isolation, so she talks to the walls, telling him about the handsome guy she's moving south to live with.
Monica is heartbroken because she just wanted to see if her little brother finally reached her waist or to give him one last hug.
She leaves the tower in tears, apologizing for the life Gerald was forced to lead.
In a rare moment of actual warmth, Gerald sends her a final message of congratulations on her wedding. He tells his sister to live well and be happy, showing that despite the tower's coldness, a small part of that little boy is still in there.
Back in the present, Gerald is preparing for a dangerous journey and gets a special delivery from Alchemist Zero.
It looks like a standard walking staff for a blind man, but Zero actually hid a deadly blade inside, because he knows Gerald is never truly safe.
Gerald is ready for a forced march to his destination, but Marin comes sprinting out to try and join him. She's desperate to help, even though everyone knows she has the worst carriage sickness in the history of the Empire. The Duke isn't having it and gently shuts her down, telling her the ride will be brutal and there's no reason for her to push herself through that kind of pain. He wants her to stay safe and comfortable at the castle instead of vomiting her way across the territory. Marin keeps worrying about his health, pointing out that he barely sleeps and offering to read him fairy tales in the carriage to help him rest. She's basically trying to be his portable sleep aid, but the Duke is firm about going solo. Since she can't go with him, Marin hands over a special Madeleine tea as a parting gift. She's literally vibrating with anxiety, hoping he'll take care of himself while he's away from her watchful eyes. Gerald steps into the carriage and promises to be careful, leaving a very concerned Marin watching the wheels pull away into the distance. It seems the Duke is going back to the isolation he knows best, but this time he's taking her tea with him. At the destination, the local couple is having an absolute meltdown knowing the Duke is on his way. They're scrambling to prepare a grand welcome because they know Gerald is not the type of guest you want to disappoint. Duke Gerald finally rolls up to the Adrian estate, and the family butler, Moro, is basically vibrating with fear. The Duke doesn't care about the long trip or the small talk, he is there for one reason and one reason only, his sister's children. Standing tall like a dark king, Gerald points out that they sent a letter specifically saying they'd arrive before the funeral. He demands to know the exact location of the Count's daughters and son immediately. Watching from the shadows, Viscount Killon is already being a world-class hater, calling Gerald a blind bastard under his breath. He's baffled that the Duke can hear his whispers from such a massive distance away.
Killon's wife-to-be warns him to shut it before the Duke hears him, but Killon just adjusts his fake smile and steps forward to play the perfect host.
Killon formally introduces himself and his fiancée, Jelmia Rose, trying to act like they aren't the villains of this story.
He even has the nerve to act like it's an honor to meet the man he just insulted.
Gerald remains an absolute ice cube, completely unimpressed by the polite introductions. He cuts through the nonsense and asks once more, "Where are my nieces and nephew?" Killon pulls a total lie out of thin air, claiming the kids are so traumatized by their parents' death that they are refusing to leave their rooms. He even says he had to scold them for their lack of manners. The tension hits a breaking point when Killon mentions a welcome party.
Gerald snaps back, reminding him that the family is in mourning and a party is the last thing anyone should be talking about.
Intimidated by the Duke's crushing aura, Killon finally shuts up and agrees to guide them to the parlor.
He's realizing that messing with the Duke of Vines is a very dangerous game. Behind Gerald's back, Jelmia starts whispering poison into Killon's ear, complaining that the Duke is looking down on him just because of his Viscount rank. Killon promises her that he'll be a count by tomorrow and that Gerald is just a temporary obstacle.
He suspects Gerald might have actually cared about his sister more than anyone thought.
We see Killon's true colors as he storms through the halls, cursing the Vines family for always interfering with his greed. To him, the siblings are just thorns in his eye that need to be removed. Killon unlocks a secluded room with heavy chains, revealing that he's literally holding the 3 daughters captive. He demands to know if they've been well behaved while he was away. We meet the sisters, Dia, Garnet, and the tiny Rubiana.
Despite being terrified, young Rubiana calls him a monster for locking them up and hiding their little brother, Perito. Killon threatens the girls, telling them to act perfectly submissive when they finally meet the Duke.
He tells them that if they want to see Perito again, they have to follow his script. After he leaves, the sisters are left in despair. Rubiana asks if the Duke will really help them, but Garnet is skeptical since he's always lived like a stranger to their family. Even with all the doubt, they cling to their mother's final promise, that the House of Vines will always protect them. Outside, Gerald stands watching, his blind eyes hiding a resolve that Killon definitely isn't ready for.
We open with a heartbreaking memory as Dia recalls the last time she saw her parents and her brother Perry.
They left with a promise to bring back a birthday present, but instead, they left her with a mystery that would ruin her life. Her parents' bodies were eventually found, but little Perry simply vanished into thin air.
Dua is left all alone, desperately trying to find out what actually happened during that fatal trip.
Dia first goes to her father's most loyal vassals for help, but she is stunned to see them all acting like they have collective amnesia. They are either dodging her or flat out refusing to get involved in the investigation. Looking like a ghost herself, Dia turns to her uncle Killon as a last resort.
But instead of comfort, she's met with a cold, dismissive attitude that screams red flags. Killon finally drops the act and reveals the dark truth. The vassals are avoiding her because he told them to.
He then warns her to keep her mouth shut if she ever wants to see Perry again. The realization hits Dia like a ton of bricks, her own uncle is the kidnapper. She is forced to submit to his every cruel demand just to keep her little brother from being the next victim.
The sisters keep holding on to their mother's promise that House Vines would protect them, but as the days pass without a single reply to their letters, they feel totally abandoned by their only hope.
Plot twist.
Duke Gerald is actually way closer than anyone realizes.
He's been secretly lurking in the shadows, monitoring Killon's every move while waiting for his subordinate Kay to finish gathering the receipts. Gerald is absolutely boiling with fury after learning that Killon rushed the funeral and cremated the bodies immediately. It was a calculated move to hide how badly the Count and Countess were actually damaged. Back at the castle, the rest of the staff are doing double takes.
They realize the Duke basically performed a speed run across the Empire, pushing his horses to finish a 10-day trip in just 1 week.
Meanwhile, Marin is a total nervous wreck.
She can't focus on anything except wondering if Gerald is eating his meals, or if he's run out of the herbal salve she made for his eyes.
She is currently in a deep spiral of self-loathing, calling herself pathetic because her motion sickness prevented her from being there to read the Duke to sleep when he needs it most.
Just as Marin is drowning in her own thoughts, a tall and incredibly handsome stranger suddenly appears out of nowhere.
The crazy part is that he looks exactly like a high-definition, grown-up version of Zero, which is enough to make anyone do a major double take. The mystery man introduces himself as Zeromian Rodel Sant, the older brother of Zero and a member of the elite Northern Ducal House. Marin's brain basically hits a 404 error because this guy and his entire family lore were never even mentioned in the original novel she read.
Zeromian doesn't miss a beat and immediately starts teasing Marin for her visible panic.
He can see right through her and mocks her for spending her entire day vibrating with anxiety over the Duke's well-being.
Marin tries to use her logic to stay detached, reminding herself that Gerald is the strongest male lead in history, and is destined to win every battle.
But despite her best efforts to stay cool, her heart is still tight in absolute knots over him.